The Seattle Kraken are preparing for year two with a new attitude and a new mascot. Erica Ayala is here to talk about all things Kraken next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could join us today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Kraken, Erica Ayala. Erica, year two in Seattle, 4-0 so far in the preseason. Talk to me about what's making this team do so well this year.
Hey, Gil, always great to be back with you on the national show. And regarding the Seattle Kraken, we focused a lot on offense. We focused on bringing in forwards, whether it was through the trade that we saw, that's how we got Oliver Bjorkstrand, of course, or free agency, Andre Burakovsky, but also not just focusing on forwards, but focusing on veteran forwards. We bring up the tally of NHL players that have won a Stanley Cup. We bring in a few more players that have had a Stanley Cup. And so I think that's really going to help as well, since we know that the future is bright with Shane Wright and Matty Beniers up the middle, and they are expected to get some time. And now they'll have that with veteran leadership on the same shift side by side with them on the ice.
You mentioned Shane Wright, obviously a surprise that he falls to the Kraken in the draft. How has he looked so far in camp and in preseason?
I think he's looked solid. I think, it's some people see Matty Beniers and Shane Wright as a package deal. And I do think that Matty has felt a little bit more comfortable. But remember, he had 10 NHL games last season after a heartbreaking loss in the Frozen Four with Michigan. He came over to Seattle. So I think he's really picked up where he left off. As far as Shane, I think that he's been working really hard. We saw in his first preseason game that he was centering Jordan Eberle and Jaden Schwartz. So he's got a lot of support, which I think is only going to help him. Let's remember, this is an 18-year-old looking to make an NHL roster and has a pretty good shot. I think it's all but a foregone conclusion that Shane Wright will be with us in the NHL this season. That said, it has been a competitive camp, but I think he's looked good. I think he's looked solid, and there's definitely some upside. But, I've heard it said from folks that are out in Seattle that every shift, every game, he's getting better. And that's what you want to see.
No question. Philip Grubauer, tough start last year, picked it up in the second half. How is he looking so far this year, and how important is he to the success of this team?
Well, goaltending, of course, is important. That's one of the big lingering questions as we went into our first official offseason. And I said it a lot last year, probably even with you, Gil, on the show. He never looked comfortable in front of the Seattle Kraken. And he was doing a lot of work trying to clean up some mistakes that were made, quite honestly, in all three zones defensively, that then led to offense for our opponents. So I mentioned forwards, and keeping possession has been a huge focus, and we can tell early on. That being said, we also brought in Steve Briere, a new goaltending coach. That was one of the first thing that we knew, is that there would be a new goaltending coach. We got that news in the exit interviews. That's how integral Ron Francis and the rest of the Seattle Kraken front office staff felt that making a change in leadership at that position would be. So of course, that's going to trickle down to Philip Grubauer. And then we had some unfortunate news. Chris Driedger really couldn't stay healthy last year, and unfortunately tears his ACL in that gold medal game with Canada in the World Championships. So unfortunately, he will be out. Mentioning some of that leadership, mentioning some guys that have been around and been successful in the NHL and with successful teams. Martin Jones is who we have as well with Philip Grubauer. I've liked Martin Jones. I think he looks very cool, calm, and collected. Both goaltenders who we were expecting expecting to play big minutes. Grubauer and Jones have looked solid, and that's going to be huge for the Seattle Kraken this season.
Talk to me about the difference in attitude and expectations in year 2 as compared to year 1.
So I'll start with the latter. I don't know that the expectation is too much different from internal camp. I think that the Seattle Kraken have always been a team that has been expected to play a certain way. And I guess I would say the same about attitude. What has changed is really that we're raising the bar. I think everyone got to a point last season where we knew we were going to do what we could do with what we had. I think what I will say is that coming from the top, and Dave Haxtell, and another thing Ron Francis said is that he now has a 4-coach bench where it was only Dave Haxtell and 2 assistants last year. That was another thing that Ron Francis kind of fell on the sword about and felt that the front office didn't do enough for Dave Haxtell and the coaching staff. So what I will say is that Dave Haxtell also looks a lot more comfortable. He looks like he has a lot more runway to be able to implement his systems and really do what he wants to and what he envisions with this squad. So I think everything has been elevated. We mentioned in the beginning, as a lot of people have, there's nowhere really to go up for Seattle, given what we had last season. Now, how much of that is going to parlay into more wins than we had last year? Of course, that's still to be determined. But what I like so far is that the work ethic is looking really great, again, with puck possession. The special teams have been a focus. The penalty kill looks amazing to the point where it at times has looked very much like a power kill. Again, wanting to have possession. 2 shorthanded goals in our first 2 preseason games. That tells me that we're really trying to focus on offense. I think, though, where we'll really figure out where that attitude and expectation is when we don't have the puck, is when we are trying to back check or defend a breakaway. I think we haven't really seen that yet. And so that will be the big test for me with the Seattle Kraken once we head into the regular season.
All right, they unveiled their new mascot over the weekend. Lots of publicity there. What are your thoughts and how it looks and how the fans are sort of reacting to the new mascot?
It's a great question, Gil. That's right. We have Bowie, the troll. First of all, as someone who has been known to troll a time or two on social media or really handle trolls on social media, I'm always up for a fight there. I love that. But jokes aside, I'm always kind of like, with mascots, I think, but also I have to be honest, I'm not the demographic that mascots are really for, I think it's for families and for young folks. And at first I was like, but I think what we see with Seattle is they've done a lot in the details. Bowie's wearing our absolutely clean away jerseys, those whites, has some hair. It's this electric blue hair, an homage to the flow of hockey players' hair and a part of hockey culture. Another thing that I really like, some people a little disappointed there weren't some tentacles maybe, or go with like a deep sea creature since we are the Kraken. But if you look at Bowie, and this kind of goes into, I just talked about this on a crossover episode with Jess Belmosto of Locked On Flames, but there's a tentacle hanging from Bowie's ear, and it alludes to perhaps Bowie having an entanglement with maybe a baby Kraken a time or two, and that just goes to this mysterious kind of in the deep that goes in with a lot of the Seattle Kraken branding. So that's the same with the red that you see in the S for Seattle. That's because you see one eye but you don't know where the other one is, and so some of this stuff, they're really playing into the mythology and the mystery of it. So I think that's been a lot of fun. Also really playing into that they want Climate Pledge Arena to be known for much more than just hockey, for music and maybe even basketball, or I should say men's basketball, because the Seattle Storm have I've already played
That's
playoff
right.
games there. But I think it's cool to see that they integrated a lot of Seattle culture into Bowie the mascot. So for that, I think Bowie might be growing on me. We'll see if I end up with a plush doll by the end of the season.
I love it. I love it. All right, Erica, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Sure thing. Well, as always, thanks for listening to us over here on the Locked On NHL Network. You can find Locked On Kraken wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening to this, and of course on YouTube. We really appreciate you subscribing and hitting those notifications so that you do know when we have special episodes that go up. And as for me, you can find me at elindsay08. That's ELINDSAY08 and at Locked On Kraken, all one word, on all social media platforms.
All right, Erica, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. And at Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use Simply Safe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why I love it. I mean, you can control the system from your phone with the Simply Safe app, and it's got a crystal clear HD live stream of your security cameras and a wide variety of high-tech sensors. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment that a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home and can't be reached. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNHL. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnNHL to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe.